everybody, it's Lily from Growing Up Garden. Today we're going to show you a tour of our garden. It's really big. Thank you.
All right, let's go check it out.
Yeah. Yeah, dude.
So I'm going to start the garden tour in my courtyard where my front door of my house is. So in this bed here, I've got two different varieties of carrots growing. These are the Cosmic Purple carrots from Baker Creek, Heirloom Seed Company. Then I have a standard orange carrot variety also planted in here. And as you guys can see too, I have basil plants that came up. They came up volunteer. I didn't actually plant those. We had a basil plant planted in the middle of the bed last year, and the seeds just fell in the bed, and now I've got basil plants, which is great because we love to come out here and harvest basil for our dinners. And the carrots this year are doing really well. Hopefully we get some nice, big, juicy carrots out of this bed. I also have a grape plant growing up next to the house. That's a red Flame Grape. We actually started these grapes from cuttings from my wife's grandfather's grape plant. Give you guys a shot. It actually has some grapes growing on it. This is the second season it's been planted here, so hopefully in the next couple of years we'll get some grapes out of this thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn around. So this area here is our composting area. We have the Jor Form 270 composter, and this actually takes care of all of our food scraps we produce in our kitchen. In the past, I used to actually have compost heaps here where this raised bed is. This is my composting area, and I would just compost all the grass clippings from the yard. Everything from the garden would actually end up in this area and get composted down and put back into the garden. But I've gotten to the point now where I don't have time to come out and maintain the compost heap, so I decided to put a raised bed in here. So this is the first year I've had a bed here, and I decided to plant pepper plants in here. So I've got all kinds of different kinds of peppers growing in here. I've got my Zwarsky peppers. I've got the purple macaroni pepper. I'll give you a shot of that. This thing is absolutely loaded with the purple macaroni. So yeah, I definitely recommend growing that. It's a really high yield plant. I've got purple bell peppers. Let's see if we can give you a shot. I might actually harvest a bunch of this stuff, and then at the end of the video I'll show you guys our little harvest basket. So there's the bell peppers. I think this one was Italian bull's horn. I lost the little tag for it. I actually lost the tag for a bunch of these. I think the kids pulled them out. But yeah, the peppers are doing great. I'm using tomato cages to hold them up in here, and it's doing really well. Let me take you guys to my other pepper bed, which is in here. It's kind of shaded by one of my plants above, and these are the Zwarsky peppers that I was just talking about. This is a smaller one, but you can see back there. Let's see if you can see it. I've got a bunch of nice looking Zwarskys growing here. Look at that guy. One of my favorite peppers to eat. These are my favorite peppers. They're a sweet pepper. They're not hot. I'm not growing any hot peppers this year because the kids, they don't like them. And I don't want them to come out here and just start eating a hot pepper and burn their mouth off. Well, but they'd learn their lesson quickly. So this first row right here, this is banana peppers, sweet banana peppers. Let's see if I can get you a shot. There's a shot of one. Hard to do here. There we go. Sweet bananas. Those are really good to cook with tofu, make like a tofu scramble, or you can make a standard, scrambled eggs with sweet banana peppers. Tastes really good. So we're looking at the walkway leading up to my front door. This is on the right side as you come in. I've got a nice little flower bed But I just planted these naked lady flowers for my wife, and these are her favorite flowers. They're called naked ladies because they have a naked stalk on them, and then they have the flowers on top. And these flowers are one of the best smelling flowers ever. So I definitely recommend you guys grow some naked ladies. So I'm going to take you guys over here. I've got red Malabar spinach growing, and it's growing up on a trellis that I have connected to the house. And I actually didn't plant any of this red Malabar spinach. This all came up volunteer because of these little berries right here. These are actually the seeds of the red Malabar spinach. Let's see if I can give you a shot of that. So if I pop this inside, there it is right there. That's the red Malabar spinach seed, and it has a really beautiful color inside. You can make some natural paints with it, I guess, if you wanted to. And then that seed will fall and give me some more Malabar spinach plants. And this stuff is kind of like a gelatinous texture to it. It's got a lot of moisture in it. See? Let's see if I can give you a shot of that. And yeah, you can eat that instead of your standard spinach that you get from the store. And one good thing about the Malabar spinach here is the bugs do not touch it. So it's pretty nice looking stuff. Alright, so we're looking at some funny looking things here hanging off the trellis. I actually put these up here in the springtime because they were in my way and I just never moved them. These are kagutsa gourds. And I grow these because a lot of my relatives, my mom's uncles, used to grow them in their gardens. All the Italian people would grow these, and they actually eat the gourds when they're smaller. They make different dishes with them. So I started the gourd here. I've grown this every year here. It's because it's kind of a fun thing to do. So I planted one this year because I didn't want to have like a million of these things everywhere. And look at this. Let me give you guys a close-up of how big the stalk of this thing is. So it goes up along the house. It actually, I didn't train this, it just climbed up. This year's kagutsa is probably the biggest, most vigorous plant I've grown. And it's actually above my head. It's suspended by a giant archway that I built a couple years ago. And I'm actually going to take the archway down this year because it got so heavy with kagutsas that it started to snap the wood that it was hanging off of, and I had to kind of build some reinforcements this year. And the problem with the kagutsas is you'll come out here one day and they'll be a foot long, and then 3 days later they're that big, and they're not really good to eat when they're bigger. They get kind of spongy, so you definitely want to eat them when they're smaller. But you can grow them, for show, I guess, or you could actually make things with the gourds. I know there's a lot of artists that will use gourds for their artwork, so maybe you can grow some kagutsa and maybe sell the gourds to some artists. But they get quite big, as you can see here. It's hard to see. I'll flash a picture on the screen and you guys can see how big they really get. What else do we have growing in this area? I have beans planted along the trellis here. I got yard long beans here, and we've been so busy this year I didn't even get to pick the yard longs yet. These are actually dried, so I can actually use those as dried beans or use them for seeds for next season. Here's a one that you can use in a stir fry when they're green. I had a nice lady come by, and she was actually going to a yard sale, and she was telling us how amazing the garden is and how delicious these yard long beans are. to grow. She said she puts them in stir fries. There are some beans planted along the fence here, but they're not really doing much. They're Bluelake pole beans, and they're not really growing that well. I think they just got shaded out by all the other plants here. Okay, so next, right here along the front edge of this raised bed, I have strawberries growing all along this thing so that the kids can come out here and pick strawberries. And then when I planted these things, they weren't that big, but look at what happens with strawberries. They like to, they send out runners. They send out these things here, and what happens is this will sit on the ground and create roots, and they'll just keep growing and growing and making more strawberries. If I didn't touch this raised bed, it would probably take over. Strawberries would probably take over the whole raised bed. Okay, so I've got one more thing in this raised bed that I'd like to show you guys. So right here I have two tomato cages side by side. These are my twin tomato cage towers. And these two varieties are the Early Girl tomato varieties. You can get these at any Home Depot, any nursery sells these things. They're a hybrid variety. And I have to say that these tomatoes are the best producing tomatoes for me by far. I've never had a problem with the Early Girls. They just keep pumping out tomatoes. There's so many tomatoes we can't even eat them all. That's how many there are on this thing. I mean, it's got, like, if I picked all the tomatoes, I'd probably have a 5-gallon bucket full right now. Let me pick one of these for you guys so you can see. Nice looking Early Girl tomato. And they taste so amazing, and they're just super sweet. And I don't recommend buying tomatoes at the store. Just grow your own tomatoes so you can have the best quality possible and flavor, because tomatoes at the store just suck. So definitely get out there and plant some Early Girls, because they are the best. And the plants, I would say the plants are, let's see, let's take a shot over here. I'll give you a shot of them. If I stand back, it's hard. I can't even get the whole thing in frame because it's so big. I would say that's at least 8-foot tall tomatoes. Pretty amazing. Alright, so I'm going to show you guys our cherry tomato plants. This year I only planted 2 cherry tomato varieties. Well, actually I planted 3, but only 2 of them survived. So here I have the Sun Gold cherry tomato, and I also have the Super Sweet 100. This year's tomatoes were kind of funny this year because, as you can see on the video, the plants are completely covered in cherry tomatoes. So many tomatoes that they're all over the ground. And if you looked at it, you would think, oh, they're not eating their tomatoes. Well, guess what? We come out and pick these things every day, and we just can't pick them and give them away fast enough. This thing basically put out all its tomatoes at once. And then the plant kind of stopped, almost like it stopped growing after it put out all of the tomatoes. Usually when I plant the cherries, it puts out some tomatoes and we pick them, and then it'll put out more, and so on. This thing just put them all out at once, and then it kind of just slowed down. I don't know if it was because of the summer. It was pretty hot here in the summertime, and maybe they weren't getting enough water. I'm not sure what was going on, but some of the leaves dried out on it. But the plant is actually starting to come back again, so maybe we're going to get a second wave of cherry tomatoes out of these 2 plants. I had another cherry tomato plant that I planted right there. It's kind of hard to see on the camera. Right in there. And the weirdest thing is I planted all the tomatoes at the same time. They were all the same size. This tomato plant here, it did not grow for like 2 months. And this was actually an heirloom variety. And I think it was called Brad's Crazy Cherry Tomato from, you can get it from Baker Creek Seed Company, and it just didn't grow. And I don't know what was going on with it. Just didn't do that good. So what happened was my melon plant, it actually just kind of took the space of the cherry tomato plant, and now I've got a melon growing where the cherry tomato should be. And this year I have the tomato plants growing on a wire it's called remesh. That's what the wire's called. You can get that at Home Depot. And I basically train the cherry tomatoes as they grow. I just tie them with some twine. It's it's made out of plants. So, you know, at the end of the season, you can just cut the twine and let it fall on the ground, and it'll just break down into the soil. You don't have to worry about it. So that, yeah, so I built this nice 2x4 material with a 4x4 post to hold up the wire, which holds up the tomato plants. It works really well. The Twin Tower tomato cage is made out of the same material also. And I think they're like, it's like under $10 a panel, which is, it's almost the size of like a piece of sheetrock, or a piece of plywood, similar size, maybe a little bit smaller. So definitely go check those out at Home Depot and make yourself a really nice tomato cage or tomato fence. So I'm going to take you guys around the tomatoes and show you what else I have growing here in the front of the house. Alright guys, so now we are in front of my house. I'm actually standing in the street, and you're probably wondering, what are these 4 boxes here in the front of the house? So this year on my YouTube channel, I'm doing an experiment to see if it's possible to grow 100 pounds of potatoes in 4 square feet. So there's an article online that says that you can grow 100 pounds of potatoes in a 4 square foot container. And these are my containers, and I had all the potatoes grow this season, and they were actually way out of these boxes, and then the plants have died back now, so the potatoes are actually ready to harvest now. I'm actually letting them dry out in the ground a little bit so that they can the skin can toughen up. And then pretty soon I will be harvesting these potatoes and seeing if I actually got 100 pounds of potatoes. So definitely go check out those videos. They're some of my most popular videos that I have on my channel. And don't forget to subscribe so you can see when I post my final potato harvest. So that's what's in these boxes. I'll give you guys a shot of inside. Yeah, a couple months ago, maybe a month and a half ago, these were full of potato vines, and they died back, as you can see. There's 4 different varieties of potatoes here. I've got the rose fin apple fingerling, I've got banana fingerling, these are Kennebec potatoes, and I have the all blue purple potato in the one behind the Kennebec. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk to my side area here. This is my neighbor's yard that we're looking at. They're doing some construction work right now. So all along this trellis that I built using the same kind of remesh wire, I have sunflower plants planted all along here, and I have melons. So these are mountain honey cantaloupes that we're growing. Give you a shot. Look at how big that thing is. We've already had 3 cantaloupes this season, and they are so good. There's nothing like homegrown cantaloupes. So the reason I planted cantaloupes and sunflowers together is the theory was that once the sunflowers would grow up, I'd trim all the leaves back, and then the cantaloupes would crawl on the sunflower stalks, and I would get cantaloupes hanging off the sunflowers. The sunflowers would act as like a little trellis for the cantaloupes. Here we go. Let me squeeze in here. I mean, it's completely covered in cantaloupes. Uh-oh. Something. Oh, maybe the sun damaged that one. That one's kind of sun damaged, but yeah, you guys get the idea of what I was trying to do here. Try not to shake the camera too much. So that's my cantaloupe and sunflower wall. And I've got one of the sunflowers. It's crazy. It's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sunflowers growing off of it. Here we go. Give you a shot. There's a cantaloupe hanging from one of the sunflowers. Some more cantaloupes. Yeah, definitely get yourself some mountain honey cantaloupes. Very tasty. And I recommend growing your cantaloupes on a trellis, because what happens is if you put the cantaloupes on the ground, the bugs will actually chew holes in them. The little pill bugs and the pincher bugs, they'll start chewing on them and they'll wreck your cantaloupes. So it's actually better to grow them on a trellis, and then when they're ripe, they'll just fall off on the ground, and you just come out here in the morning before you go to work and check and see if there's any on the ground, and then if you see one, you got a ripe cantaloupe to eat for breakfast. So I'm going to take you guys past the potatoes now and show you what else I have growing in this main raised bed garden here. So I've actually planted another tomato plant right here, and this is another heirloom variety. It's called, I think it's called Pink Berkeley Tie-Dye, and you know what? It did not do well this year. It didn't produce any tomatoes. I didn't get one tomato on it, and it looks super sick, and I don't know, it's just not growing. So my melons are now using the tomato cage to hang off of, which is great because I want to get something out of that area. So I don't know if I just suck at growing heirloom stuff, or it just doesn't grow well where I'm at. It should grow well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you guys to this raised bed area, and here I planted Bluelake bush beans. So my wife this year told me that I needed to plant tons and tons of beans because she wanted to have lots of green beans, and guess what? She got what she wanted. She's come out here like all summer since they started producing. Every day she's gotten, not every day, but every other day, come out here and gotten baskets and baskets of green beans. I mean, so many green beans we can't eat them all. And they are really tasty green beans to grow. You can get the seeds at Home Depot, probably any store. So right now they're getting kind of probably late in the season. Here's what they look like. It's better to pick them when they're young and tender like this. And the more you pick, the more it will produce green beans. And you can also let these things mature, and you can let them dry like these to save the seeds. Actually, that right there, that's not a Bluelake bean. That might be another variety of bean that I threw in here. Let's see if we can find one. It's probably another variety. The Bluelake the Bluelake bush beans are actually white in color. Maybe right here is one. There's a little baby one. Hard to see. Here's one right here. Yep. There's one there. I'll throw it in there and it'll probably grow back next season. So yeah, you can let them mature and you can save the beans to plant for next year, or you can cook them as dried beans, make a pot of beans and have them for dinner. So those are our green beans. God, they're so good. I wish you guys could come over and taste them. So I'm going to take you guys over to the other side of my driveway and show you what I've got growing over there. I'll give you a shot of my arch growing over my walkway. And those are more grapes growing against the house. Okay guys, so next to my driveway, next to my boat, I have a zucchini bed. This is where we grow all our zucchini. I've got a few different varieties of zucchini in here. I think our favorite variety this year, I wouldn't recommend growing any of the other varieties, so I'm not even going to talk about them. This is the Raven variety, or you can get the Black Beauty. I think it's called Black Beauty. That's standard zucchini variety that you can buy at any nursery, any Home Depot. I recommend growing those. The other varieties we try to grow, they just, I don't know, they just don't do that well. And they're not as good as the green ones. So that's our zucchini bed. We probably eat zucchini, like, seems like we eat it every night. We get so much zucchini. The plants have kind of started to slow down now. It's getting later in the season. It's almost September here, and they're pretty much, they're almost done growing zucchinis, but we still got a few growing in there. If you guys can see, I've got some corn plants growing. I did that for fun for Blake. He loves eating corn, and I just wanted to show him what a corn plant looked like. So I threw a couple seeds in the ground, and they grew. So we've got some couple ears of corn. I don't think they're going to be that good, because it's better to plant corn in rows, so they kind of pollinate each other. That's why corn is planted so closely together. Next to the zucchini, in this bed here, I actually have potatoes that I planted. So these are the same varieties of potatoes that I have in my towers. I planted here just to see what the difference would be if I planted them in the ground. So the fingerlings were in this area, and they've died off, so I actually need to come out here and harvest them. It's been so busy this year, I haven't had time. So it goes all the way back to the sugarcane plant. Yeah, and if you're wondering, that's sugarcane. It's actually really delicious right now. You just you can break a piece off and cut it up and chew on it. If you guys are interested in growing your own sugarcane, I actually have a video on how to grow sugarcane, so you can maybe check that out on my channel tonight. Alright, so next to my potato and sugarcane plants, I have a box that I made, and in that box I have a nice fig tree. So this fig tree we actually planted from a cutting. It's almost been 4 years. We planted this when my son Blake was born, from a cutting from my wife's grandfather, and I'd say the cutting was as big as my pinky finger when we planted it, and now it's getting to be a pretty good sized fig tree. It actually outgrew its container. I had it in a wine barrel for 2 years, maybe 2.5 years, and it sat for a long time in one spot, and the roots actually grew into the ground, and when I moved it, I yanked the roots out, and it kind of shocked the tree last season. But I built this container this year, and now it's doing quite well. We actually just picked the last fig off the tree this week. The kids have been eating figs off it all summer. My son Blake will come out here, and he begs me to pick him a fig, even if he even wants them if they're not ripe. But he doesn't quite understand, when to pick a ripe fig. So he's picked a few that weren't ripe, unfortunately. Oh, you know what? We actually do have a few more figs on the tree. This one's not ready yet. It's still a little hard, but I'm sure he'll be eating that fig soon. You guys are probably wondering why this raised bed has wheels. It's because this box needs to be moved in and out because of that gate right there. That actually is not a fence, it's a gate that opens. It's a 14-foot gate, and behind that I park a big toy hauler. So I actually have to move this out of the way, and it still has its wheels on it. I actually built all this to move it. It's got its own axle and dually wheels that I put on it. I'll put a little video on the screen so you guys can see it in action moving. Yeah, in a perfect world, this would be in its own. This would be in the ground, but our property is so small, we don't really have a space to plant it. When we move out to the country, which we're actively looking for a place to move to, looking at a lot of property, like 20 to 30 acres maybe. Then we'll have a spot to put it, and it's gonna be fun because I'm gonna go crazy with the garden and fruit trees. I might have a permaculture property one of these days. We'll see what happens. So that's our front yard. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take you guys into the backyard and show you our what we have growing in the backyard. It's not much, but we have a few things back there. And one of these days, yes, I will get this yard looking decent. I just haven't finished it yet. Some people will probably complain, oh, your yard's messy, but I'm only one person that does all this work. So let's head to the backyard and I'll show you what we have growing back there. Alright, so now we're in my backyard. I don't have too much growing back here. I have 2 trees growing back here. So this is the first tree. This is an apple tree that we planted when Lily was born. It's a 5 variety apple. This raised bed I made for it out of some reclaimed lumber. What's interesting about this apple tree is in spring, early spring, it actually produced a bunch of apples for us. It flowered and we had a whole crop of apples. And check it out, it actually flowered again and is producing a second crop of apples. So we're going to actually get 2 crops of apples off of this tree this season, which is it's actually the first time that has happened. So hopefully this will get planted in the ground in the next few years when we move to a bigger property. But in the meantime, it's working pretty good in this raised bed. Yeah, we don't have too much in our backyard. We have a swimming pool because the backyard is for the kids to play in. You got to have a place for your kids to play. Can't have everything as a garden unless you're single and don't have any kids. So yeah, that's the pool where we like to swim. The tree is right next to the pool. We have a rose bush that my wife loves. And I used to have a giant set of wind chimes here, and I actually had to take them down because the strings that I used, or the paracord cable that I used to make it, it actually started breaking, and I was worried about the tubes falling, so I took it down. I'm gonna have to make them out of steel cable. I'll flash a little video on the screen so you guys can see my super wind chimes that I made. Those are the super wind chimes, 3-inch tubes, 10 feet long. I think it's 15 feet tall from the ground to the top. I made those for my wife for Christmas. That was her Christmas present. I'll give you some perspective. So I'm going to take you guys over to the other area. So I've got some sugarcane plants growing back here. That's actually purple sugarcane growing there. I've got another fig tree. This is actually a cutting from the fig tree in the front yard that I planted here. It still hasn't given us any figs yet. I think next year we'll probably get a few figs off of it. And this is our herb bed. And you know what? I haven't done anything with this herb bed this season. I haven't really touched it. I just haven't had the time to deal with it. So I've got mint growing here. When the mint really grows good in the beginning of the season, the kids like to come out here and eat it. They eat it raw. I've got some strawberry plants. These are like alpine strawberries. It makes like a white strawberry. I've got, this is Stevia that I planted a few years back. And it'll die off and grow back in the summertime. If you guys don't know what Stevia is, it's like a sweet tasting plant. They make artificial sweetener out of it. It's better to actually eat the Stevia plant maybe, but instead of eating the fake stuff. Now this is sage. I like to use sage for making gravy. And then I have thyme here. And man, thyme, wish you could smell it. It smells so good. So that's our little herb bed in our backyard. Alright, so that's the end of my garden tour. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you guys haven't already subscribed to my channel, please hit the subscribe button down below so you can keep up to date and when I post my latest gardening videos. And don't forget to share these videos with your family and friends. And I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.